Welcome to Dream Science. Maybe your thoughts are a little tangled tonight, or maybe you're just here to rest, to let the unknown lull you toward sleep. Whatever brought you, this is a space without rush, without noise, only quiet curiosity and calm wonder. Tonight, we're exploring the invisible, the strange forces that might guide your decisions before you're even aware you've made them. We'll touch the eerie timing of the Libet experiment, where your brain chooses before you do. We'll meet particles that shift when watched, and minds that mimic each other silently. Are your choices truly yours, or is something hidden moving the strings? Wherever you are, in bed, in thought, beneath stars, we're glad you're here. If this brings you peace, a like or subscribe helps others find their way to. Now close your eyes and drift with us into the unseen. This is Dream Science. You think you're in control. You sit at the cafe and choose the vanilla latte instead of the cappuccino. You decide to take the scenic route home. You swipe left on one face and right on another. These feel like your decisions, unshakable, proof of your free will. No one forced your hand. No one whispered in your ear. You made a choice. Right, but what if you didn't? What if every decision you make, every preference, every impulse, every yes or no isn't truly yours, but a finely tuned reaction, shaped by invisible forces that have been pulling your strings since before you could speak? They never told you how easily you could be nudged, how a particular scent in a store could increase your likelihood of spending, how a subtle color on a website could make you trust a stranger, how your childhood neighborhood still decides whether you feel safe in silence or anxious in stillness. You think you're choosing, but in many cases, you're just reacting. Predictably. The core of this unsettling truth lies priming, a psychological phenomenon that shows just how easily the subconscious can be manipulated without your awareness. Imagine this: you're given a list of scrambled words to unscrambled words like old, slow, grey, retire. You're not told what they mean or what to think. Just a game. But when you walk out of the room, researchers observe that you're walking slower than before. You've unknowingly been primed. You didn't decide to walk slower. Your body just obeyed a silent script. Priming is only the beginning. There's framing, where the way information is presented can completely change your reaction. Would you rather eat meat labeled 90% lean or 10% fat? They're the same, but you're far more likely to pick the first. There's social proof, the quiet herd you follow. The video has millions of views. Must be worth watching. Everyone's laughing. You probably laugh too, even if you didn't get the joke. There's dopaminergic conditioning, the way your brain is rewired by reward loops, notifications, likes, the buzz of your phone. You feel a little rush and come back for more. Again and again. You're not just being influenced, you're being designed. But what does this mean for you if your choices can be shaped so easily? Where does you begin and programming end? When you choose your favorite food, your political opinion, your career path, are you expressing freedom or simply echoing the environment that trained you? What if you never loved jazz music, you were just exposed to it during a pivotal emotional moment? What if you never feared failure, you were just rewarded more for staying quiet than speaking up? You feel autonomous, but your thoughts have footnotes, invisible annotations written by parents, peers, algorithms, and the past. It's uncomfortable, isn't it? Like realizing someone else has been filling in your answers, and you've just been signing the paper. But now you know. And knowing is the first act of rebellion, because with awareness, you start to notice the fingerprints. You recognize the tug of the invisible hand. You question the default path. You don't have to be a puppet to patterns. You can pause. You can wonder. You can choose to choose. Because once you see the strings, you don't have to dance to them. So next time you reach for the vanilla latte, ask yourself, was that really your craving or someone else's suggestion planted long ago? And more importantly, what happens when you start tugging back? But even as you begin tugging at those invisible strings, there's one thread you're still holding onto memory. Surely your memories are yours. They feel vivid, personal, real. You can see the cracked sidewalk outside your childhood home, smell the pancakes on a sleepy Sunday, hear the way someone once said your name. But what if I told you, your memory is not a recording, it's a reconstruction, a story you rebuild each time you recall it, and every time, the story changes. They never told you that memory is more like Photoshop than a photograph. You're not retrieving the truth. You're remixing it, reshaping it, rewriting it to fit the person you are now, not the one you were then. You think you remember your first kiss, your first heartbreak, the exact moment someone betrayed you. But studies show that even deeply emotional memories, especially those are the least reliable. They get fuzzier, warped by current emotions, twisted by new information, smoothed over by the brain's desperate need for coherence. You don't remember events. You re-experience edited versions of them, and worse, sometimes you remember things that never happened at all. Consider the Mandela effect, a collective false memory. People swearing they saw something, a phrase, a logo, an event that never existed. Berenstain Bears was never spelled Berenstein. Nelson Mandela didn't die in prison in the 80s, but thousands remember it differently, confidently, emotionally, vividly. Memory, it turns out, is democratic, not accurate. It can be influenced by a simple suggestion. In experiments, people were shown doctored photos of themselves at events they never attended, and within days, they developed detailed, emotional memories of things that never happened. You can remember the sun warming your face, the sound of laughter, the taste of cotton candy, from a fair you never went to, because your brain fills in gaps, not with facts, but with feelings and stories that seem to make sense. So if you can't trust your memory, if even your most sacred, defining moments might be illusions, who are you, really? Are you the sum of your memories, or the author of your own fiction? What does it mean when the version of your past that you carry, the one that defines your fears, desires, relationships, might be nothing more than a comfortable lie? You think you're shaped by your experiences, but what if you're actually shaped by your belief in them? But here's the strange beauty. If memory is malleable, it's also moldable. You're not locked into trauma. You're not trapped in a narrative. You can edit. You can reframe. You can heal by reauthoring your past. Not by denying what happened, but by changing what it means to you now. Your brain isn't betraying you. It's offering you a gift. The power to retell your story in a way that sets you free. So ask yourself, what memory have you been holding on to that might be a myth? And, more powerfully, what myth could you let go of if you stopped calling it the truth? You carry them like truths, like instincts, like some raw, honest signal from the core of who you are. Anger, fear, shame, love, joy. They rise without permission. without explanation. You feel them before you think. You trust them even when they contradict logic, because emotions feel real, don't they? But here's the unsettling truth. Your emotions aren't facts, they're algorithms. Biological scripts evolved over millions of years fast. Dirty calculations that your body runs before your conscious mind even notices. And most of the time, they're not responding to the present. They're reacting to the past. You're afraid of rejection because once, long ago, it meant isolation, and isolation meant death. You feel jealous, not because you're cruel, but because your brain is wired to protect access to love and resources. You feel shame because being cast out from the tribe meant you wouldn't survive the winter. These weren't emotions, they were survival mechanisms. But your brain, ancient and brilliant, doesn't know you're not in a cave anymore. It doesn't know the threat is just a delayed text, or a co-worker's tone, or a look from across the room to your nervous system. Every social glitch feels like a predator in the tall grass, so your body fires up the old code. Heart races, palms sweat, stomach tightens. You're not evaluating danger, you're experiencing the echo of evolution. And here's what makes it even more strange. Emotions can be implanted. Not surgically, not with wires, just with context. In a famous experiment, researchers gave people a dose of adrenaline without telling them. Then they introduced them to strangers who were either cheerful or angry. Those who were around joy felt joy. Those around anger felt anger. They interpreted the same physical symptoms, racing heart, energy, completely differently, based only on what they saw. Your emotions can be hacked by your environment. You're not just feeling, you're interpreting, and interpretation is not neutral. It's trained by culture, by trauma, by patterns you didn't choose. So what does this mean for you when you feel fear? Is there a real threat? Or is your body running a prehistoric program on outdated data? When you feel unworthy, is that your soul speaking? Or just the echo of a critical voice from childhood still bouncing around in your nervous system? What if your strongest emotions, the ones you cling to as proof of truth, are just misfiring sensors reacting to ghosts? But here's the radical opportunity. If emotions are programs, you can learn the code. You can pause, breathe, observe, instead of being inside the emotion. You can witness it. I feel anger, not I am angry. That single shift turns reaction into reflection, and reflection is where freedom lives. You are not your emotion. You are the space that notices it. So next time you're swept up in fear, shame, rage, love, ask yourself, what is this emotion trying to protect? And more powerfully, what if I could feel it, without obeying it? You wake up and think about the meeting, the laundry, that weird thing someone said yesterday. You worry, you analyze, you rehearse, and somewhere in that stream, a quiet assumption hums beneath it all. These are my thoughts, but what if they're not? What if the voice inside your head, the endless chatter, the commentary, the self-talk, is not a private monologue, but a mosaic of other people's voices? What if your thoughts are less like fingerprints, and more like echoes? They never told you your mind was porous, that ideas are contagious, that a stranger's opinion can slip into your brain and wear the costume of your own insight. You absorb language, you mirror tone, you adopt beliefs just by being near them. You think you like something, a fashion, a phrase, a worldview, but what if it just lingered long enough in your environment to pass for a preference? Psychologists call it the mere exposure effect. The more you're exposed to something, the more likely you are to accept it. Not because it's true, not because it's meaningful, but simply because it's familiar. Familiarity breeds comfort. Comfort breeds belief, and belief feels like truth. But it goes deeper. Your thoughts don't arise from some pure, internal well. They emerge from associative networks, clusters of meaning shaped by history, emotion, and attention. Think of your brain like a garden. Every piece of information is a seed. Some are planted by experience, others are dropped in by culture, media, or casual conversations. Most of them you don't even notice. They grow in the dark until they bloom into thoughts you assume are your own. And the scariest part, you can't tell the difference. The brain doesn't tag ideas by source. It doesn't say, "This came from your dad," or "This is society talking." It just drops the thought into your awareness, and lets you take the credit. So when you think, "I'm not good enough. I need to work harder. I'll never be loved unless I prove myself." Stop. Ask yourself, who taught you to think that way? And more importantly, why do you still believe them? You might be living in a mental house someone else built. But don't panic. This realization isn't a curse, it's a key. Because if your thoughts are shaped by exposure, you can change what you're exposed to. You can prune the garden, pull up the weeds, plant new seeds with intention. Meditation. journaling. Silence. Not as escapes, but as ways to watch the stream instead of drowning in it. You are not the voice in your head. You are the one who hears it. And that listener, can choose what to believe. So, the next time a thought drifts by, before you let it shape your day, your mood, your worth, ask yourself, is this really me? Or just something I picked up along the way? You move through your day thinking you're deciding what to focus on. You open your phone for one thing, and 30 minutes vanish. You scroll past images, words, stories, and something invisible happens. Your attention gets taken. But here's the truth. You didn't just get distracted, you got spent. Because attention isn't just focus, it's currency, it's fuel, it's the gateway to every thought, belief, and behavior you'll ever have. And it's being hunted. They never told you that attention is a zero-sum game. You have only so much of it. Your brain evolved in an environment of silence. Trees, the occasional predator, but now you're surrounded by a war for your mind. Algorithms, headlines, colors, vibrations, every ping and flash is a tiny bid for the one resource you can never get back. Your time. That's secondary. Your attention. That's where transformation happens. Because whatever captures your attention shapes you. Look at something long enough and you start to believe it. Pay attention to outrage and you grow angrier. Fixate on scarcity and the world becomes a threat. You are what you notice. The science. It's chilling. Your prefrontal cortex, the seat of decision-making, is overwhelmed by noise. Every notification triggers a dopamine loop. Every app is a slot machine. And the more distracted you become, the less capable you are of choosing where to focus next. It's called attentional capture, a hijacking of your awareness. And once it's gone, your brain enters reactive mode. You stop creating. You start consuming. You stop leading your thoughts. You start following suggestion. So, ask yourself, when was the last time you truly chose where your attention went? with intention, with clarity, with care? When was the last time you sat with a single thought long enough for it to bloom instead of vanish? What if the world isn't chaotic by accident, but by design? A system that profits every time your focus fractures. Because in the modern attention economy, if you're not paying attention, you're being sold. But here's your escape route. Attention is a muscle. It weakens with distraction. It strengthens with stillness, silence, tasking, boredom. These aren't inefficiencies. They're resistance. Every time you reclaim your focus, every time you notice that you're noticing, you reclaim agency. You begin to choose what shapes you, instead of being shaped. So the next time your mind drifts, the next time your fingers twitch toward the screen, ask yourself, who profits from my attention right now? And what would happen if I gave it back to myself? You walk into a room and flip on the light. You reach for the apple, not the candy bar. You raise your hand in class. You say, I love you. You say, I'm done. And every time, it feels like a decision, like you weighed your options, ran the math, and chose freely. But what if, you didn't? What if your choice came after your brain already made it? They never told you how slow your conscious mind really is. In the 1980s, neuroscientist Benjamin Libet ran a simple but revolutionary experiment. Participants were asked to flex their wrist at a moment of their choosing. They watched a dot move around a clock and reported when they decided to move. But Libet was also measuring brain activity, and what he found shattered everything we thought about willpower. The brain's readiness, potential, a sign of motor preparation, began before the participant became consciously aware of choosing. In other words, your brain knew what you were going to do before you did, milliseconds, but enough to ask if the action is already in motion. What exactly is free will? This wasn't a fluke, it's been repeated. More advanced studies have found that patterns in brain scans can predict a person's decision up to 10 seconds before they're aware of making it. Think about that. Before you know what you want for lunch, before you reach for your phone, before you open your mouth to speak, your brain has already begun the process, and yet, you still feel like the one in control. That's because your conscious mind is a narrator, not a commander. It explains the action after it starts, wraps it in a bow, and calls it choice. You don't decide and then act, you act and then justify. So where does that leave you? Are you a puppet? A machine responding to chemistry, momentum, and memory? Or, is there still a crack in the door? A space brief but powerful where you can step in? Libet himself proposed something unexpected. Even if we don't initiate decisions consciously, we might still have the ability to veto them, to step in and say, no. That pause, that awareness, is small, but it's everything. It's the difference between reaction and response, between reflex and reflection. You may not choose the first spark, but you can choose whether to fan the flame. You may not stop the thought, but you can choose what to believe. You may not start every motion, but you can decide whether to follow through. That space, that fleeting, fragile pause, is where free will lives. And like any rare thing, it must be protected, practiced, honored. So next time you feel the urge to act, to speak, to scroll, to lash out, to numb, don't ask, why did I choose this? Ask, did I choose it at all? And if not, can I still say no? Still say no. You open your eyes, and the world appears. Light floods your vision. Shapes, colors, movement. You see a tree, a friend, a sky full of clouds, and you trust that what you're seeing is real. But here's the twist. What you're experiencing isn't the world. It's a rendering. Because by the time you see anything ... your brain has already edited reality. They never told you that your senses lie to you, not maliciously, but efficiently. You receive around 11 million bits of sensory data per second, but your brain can only consciously process about 50. So what does it do? It filters, it guesses, it fills in gaps. It gives you not what's true but what's useful. You don't see raw data, you see a model, a simulation, crafted by your brain to help you survive. And the model, it's stunningly incomplete. You don't see ultraviolet light like a bee. You don't hear infrasound like an elephant. You miss the vast majority of what exists because your biology curates your experience. Even more shocking, what you do see is often fabricated. Your brain smooths over blind spots in your vision, literally inventing what's probably there. It guesses where motion will go. It retouches colors based on context. You see a smooth, stable world, but your eyes jitter constantly, jumping from point to point in rapid seconds. Your brain stitches those jumps into a seamless movie, like a magician hiding every cut. What you call reality is really a hallucination. Your brain agrees on ... as neuroscientist Anil Seth puts it. You don't passively perceive the world, you actively create it. So ... if your senses are sculpting reality, if your experience is interpretation, not reception, what else have you mistaken for truth? How many of your certainties are just sensory compromises? The color red ... the voice you trust, the face you find familiar. What if all of it, everything, is just a filtered stream? Tailored by evolution, refined by experience, and wrapped in illusion. But here's the strange gift. Understanding this doesn't make reality meaningless. It makes it malleable. Because if perception is constructed, then awareness can deconstruct. You can catch yourself in the act of interpreting. You can pause before assuming. You can ask, is this what's really happening? Or just what I've been taught to see? You begin to notice the seams in the simulation, and, in doing so, you become more conscious, not less. Not everything you perceive is real, but not everything unreal is. Unimportant, because meaning doesn't come from what's out there. It comes from your attention, your curiosity, your presence. So the next time you find yourself certain of what you're seeing, take a breath and ask, what am I missing? What might be hiding just outside my filter? And how much more is the world trying to show me? If only I knew how to look. You live by the clock. You wake at 7. Lunch at noon. Deadlines, appointments, birthdays, memories. You mark time like footsteps, one after another, clean and forward moving, but time as you feel it. Is and real. Not in the way you think, because what you experience as time, flowing, steady, reliable isn't something you witness. It's something your brain invents. They never told you that time is not absolute. Einstein shattered that illusion over a century ago. Time, he showed, is relative, elastic, personal, affected by speed and gravity. Fly near the speed of light, and time slows down for you. Stand closer to a massive object, and time ticks slower there too. This isn't theory, it's been measured. There are astronauts who've aged slightly less than their twin siblings on Earth. There are clocks on satellites that must be adjusted daily because time literally moves differently for them than for you. And if time can bend, then what is it, really? But here's the twist that hits closer to home. Even in your everyday life, your subjective sense of time is wildly unstable. Time flies when you're in flow. It crawls in boredom. It vanishes in sleep. It warps. During trauma, your brain doesn't experience time directly. It pieces it together from motion, memory, and rhythm, like stitching together a story. In fact, during moments of complete presence, meditation, or crisis, your internal clock often disappears altogether. You're not in the moment. You are the moment. No past, no future. Just the pure now, ... stretching on forever. So, if your brain distorts time, ... if even seconds are subjective, ... what does that say about your memories of the past, your fears of the future, your grip on now? Are you living in the present or in a hallucinated timeline? When you feel guilt, you relive a past that no longer exists. When you feel anxiety, you react to a future that hasn't happened. Neither is real, both are stories. You are being haunted by phantoms of time. But here's the liberation. If time is mental, then you can bend it too. You can slow down, not by changing the clock, but by changing your attention. Presence expands time. Curiosity thickens it. Gratitude stretches. It opened like a canvas. You don't need more hours. You need more awareness inside. The hours you already have. Time doesn't move. You do. And when you stop chasing, stop counting, stop regretting, you discover that eternity was hiding in every ordinary second. So the next time you say, "I don't have time," pause, and ask, is time really slipping away? Or have I simply stopped being here too? Feel it. You look in the mirror and say, this is me. A name, a face, a history, a personality made of likes, dislikes, habits, quirks. You think of yourself as a stable eye, a single thread stretching from childhood to now, always you, always whole. But what if that self, ... DOESN, single quotes, to exist? What if the person you believe you are is just a story, one that keeps rewriting itself every moment, one that never existed in the way you imagine? They never told you that there's no single part of the brain that houses you, no seat of identity, no glowing soul center. Instead, your brain is a shifting orchestra, thoughts, sensations, memories, and reactions passing through like musicians, each playing their part and vanishing. You are not the conductor, you are the music. And like music, the self is not a thing, it's a process. When neuroscientists scan the brain during moments of introspection, asking who am I, they find activity scattered across regions, not fixed to one place. Your identity is a narrative construct, not a physical object. It's an ongoing illusion, useful, comforting, socially necessary, ... but still an illusion. Even your personality, the traits you cling to, is more flexible than you think. You're not just an introvert. You're not always impatient. These labels are bookmarks, not definitions. Under different conditions, different people, environments, or emotional states, you shift. Have you ever surprised yourself? Said something bold when you're usually quiet? Forgiven when you thought you couldn't? Felt like someone else entirely? That's not you breaking character. That's you being bigger than the character. Because the you think you are ... is just one mask your mind wears to keep the world orderly. But if the self is a fiction, a myth told by memory, emotion, and social feedback, then what's behind the mask? What watches it all? What observes the thoughts, the moods, the shifting roles? That's the real mystery. Because when you peel back the layers, the personality, the preferences, the ego, you don't find a concrete me. You find awareness, silent, unchanging, present, not. A thing, not a thought, just the space that holds all of it. And here lies your liberation. If you are not your story, you don't have to be trapped by it. You can rewrite it, detach from it, step outside of it. You can say, I am not my anger, I am not my trauma, I am not even my name. You are not the storm, you are the sky that holds it. So the next time you say, this is just who I am, pause and ask, says who? And what if you're something much vaster than you've ever believed? You think you want what you want because you chose it. You think your dreams, your cravings, your ambitions, are yours, that they rose from somewhere deep inside you, a place untouched by the world, a pure, original source. But step back for a moment, look closer. Where did those wants come from? Why that car? Why that body type? Why that lifestyle, status, or approval? Were they born from reflection or from exposure? Here's the uncomfortable truth. Many of your desires were installed, not chosen. They were shaped by marketing slogans, by movie tropes, by algorithms that know your triggers better than you do. You were trained subtly by repetition, imitation, and reward. A child doesn't naturally crave a Rolex or a beachfront penthouse. They learn to want it. By watching who gets admired when they have it. You don't dream of success in a vacuum. You dream of the kind of success that was shown to you over and over until wanting it felt like your idea. In psychology, they call this mimetic desire, the idea that we don't desire things inherently. But because we see others desiring them, desire spreads like a virus. It's contagious. You see someone admired, and unconsciously you think, what they have must be valuable. I should want it. So you chase what they chase. You want what they want, and the cycle repeats. But rarely do you pause and ask, do I actually want this, or have I just been trained to? And then there's the architecture of scarcity. Social media doesn't just show you lives, it shows you lives that are edited, filtered, and curated for envy, so you feel behind, inadequate, hungry. The scrolling never ends, and neither does the chase. Your desires keep moving the goalpost, because they were never designed to be fulfilled. They were designed to keep you moving. But here's the wild part. You can start undoing this. You can examine each want like a strange object in your hand and ask, where did you come from? Who benefits if I chase you? What am I hoping to feel if I get you? And is there another way to feel that? Now, sometimes the thing you want is valid. Sometimes it's noise. And sometimes the most radical thing you can do is want nothing for a moment and just breathe. No hunger, no chase, no performance, just stillness. Because the moment you see your desires clearly, you are no longer ruled by them. And in that space, a new kind of freedom is born. Not the freedom to do whatever you want, but the freedom to want differently, to want on your own terms, to want with your eyes open. You've been told a story that you are an individual, that you are a thinker, that your mind is your own, sovereign, private, untouched. But what if that's a myth? What if your very thinking patterns, your habits of reasoning, your instincts for truth and falsehood, your sense of what's obvious or normal or smart, were all shaped long before you ever called them yours. Because here's the reality you rarely stop to notice. Your mind was built in public, and only later labeled personal. Think back to the language you speak. Did you choose it? No, it was gifted to you or imposed upon you. And with it came not just vocabulary, but a structure for how to think. Some languages encode respect or hierarchy directly into their grammar. Some emphasize objects. Some prioritize relationships. Some have no word for ownership at all. The shape of your language, the shape of your perception, and yet you call your thoughts yours, as if they weren't sculpted by syllables handed down through centuries. And what about logic? What about common sense? Even your reasoning tools, those sacred internal mechanisms you trust, were trained. You learned what counts as a valid answer, what counts as rational, what counts as truth. But those rules weren't forged in your soul. They were inherited from teachers, from culture, from systems built to produce predictable minds. You were told to be original, but rewarded for compliance. Let's talk about identity, the deepest sense of who you are, Is it truly you, or is it a patchwork, stitched together from early praise, accidental comments, roles you fell into, labels that stuck? If someone called you smart as a child, you might have clung to that, protecting it at all costs, living inside its walls. But what if that label had never been given? Would you be someone else entirely? It's terrifying, isn't it, to realize that the you defend might be a ghost built by forces you never noticed. But this isn't a loss. This isn't hopeless. Because when you see how much of your mind was shaped, you also see how much can be reshaped. You are not just a product. You are a participant. You can unlearn. You can rebuild. You can rebuild. You can become an editor of your own operating system. So next time you say, I just think this is right. I just don't like that. I'm just not that kind of person, Pause, ask, is that really me? Or is that just the software I downloaded? Your mind may not be self-made, but it can become self-aware, and that awareness is where real choice begins. You wake up in the middle of the night, not because of pain, not because of hunger, but because something unseen feels wrong. Your heart races. You don't know why. You tell yourself it's nothing, but it's not nothing. It's fear, uninvited, unexplained, but familiar. And here's the truth you rarely consider. You didn't choose your fears. They were given to you, handed down like family heirlooms, planted like landmines, conditioned through experience, culture, repetition. You were taught to fear being wrong, taught to fear rejection, taught to fear stillness, failure, even success. But what if most of your fear isn't protecting you, just controlling you? Look closer at what makes you hesitate. You pause before speaking. Up in a meeting. You avoid the phone call you need to make. You scroll instead of starting the thing you say you want. That. It's not laziness. It's not lack of ambition. It's fear. And most of it isn't yours by choice. Some of it came from your parents, who flinched every time you reached too far. Some of it came from school, where risk was punished and safety meant staying silent. Some of it came from the world around you, the silent message that being liked was better than being real. And fear doesn't just stop you from action, it shapes your desires. It tells you what you should want. Because what you really want feels too dangerous, so you chase the safe job. You pursue the acceptable relationship. You rehearse the role society gave you, and call it preference. But what if the life you're trying to build isn't one you want, just one you've been trained to feel safe in? What if the risk you fear is actually the truth you crave? You don't cure fear by ignoring it. You don't erase it with willpower. You outgrow it by tracing it to its source. Ask it questions. Where did you come from? Who gave you to me? What are you protecting me from? And is that threat still real? When fear becomes visible, it loses its power, because most fear is just old software running in the background, outdated, unexenemics, unnecessary. Unnecessary. You may not have chosen your fears, but now you can choose whether they stay. And that shift from reacting to reprogramming is where freedom begins. Not the kind of freedom you shout about, but the quiet, powerful kind that says, I see you, I know you're there, but I decide now. You like to believe your thoughts are yours, that what arises in your mind, your opinions, beliefs, conclusions, are the product of reason, logic, experience. But pause and ask, where did those thoughts come from? You didn't invent the language they're built from. You didn't handpick the metaphors in your head. You didn't craft the categories you use to judge the world. You inherited a mental architecture, and it came with pre-installed furniture. From the moment you could listen, your mind became a hallway of echoes. Parents, teachers, television, religion, all whispering suggestions, and suggestions became assumptions. You think you're being critical. You think you're making informed choices, but so often, you're just rearranging old furniture in a room you didn't design. The phrase that pops into your head during an argument, you've heard it before. That the opinion you hold about success, about beauty, about power, you absorbed it, not concluded it. Like a song stuck in your head, some beliefs repeat, not because they're true, but because they were played the most. And here's the trap. The more familiar a thought is, the more true it feels, not because of evidence, but because your brain equates familiarity with safety. This is why propaganda works. This is why advertising works. This is why you can mistake repetition for insight. Even your original ideosophin carry the fingerprints of a culture trained you what to see, and more dangerously, what to ignore. But don't despair. This doesn't mean you're a puppet. It means you're human, and humans can rewire. You can start to listen more closely, not to the thoughts themselves, but to their tone, their timing, their origin. You can ask, who benefits from me thinking this way? Whose voice does this thought sound like? Was this belief chosen or inherited? Freedom doesn't begin with rebellion, it begins with awareness. Awareness that many of your ideas were planted by others and watered by repetition, and once you see it, really see it, you get to begin again, not from nothing, not from emptiness, but from clarity. You don't have to burn the house down, but you can open the windows, rearrange the walls, and choose what you bring inside. Thoughts will still come, some useful, some manipulative, but now you'll watch them arrive. You'll choose who stays. You'll notice who never belonged. And that's how independence is built, not by thinking alone, but by learning to think with your eyes open. You know that sensation, the quiet nudge, the chill that warns you, the strange calm that tells you this is right. We call it intuition, a gut feeling, a hunch. But what if that signal wasn't magic? What if it was history whispering through your nerves? Because your instincts are not born in the moment. They're the result of 1,000 rehearsals you don't remember having. You walk into a room and feel something's off. but can't say why. You meet someone and feel an instant trust or an unshakable discomfort. That's not guessing. That's pattern recognition. Built beneath the level of awareness, your subconscious is a hyperactive librarian. It catalogs facial expressions, voice tones, posture shifts, even the tiniest delays in a response. Things your conscious mind ignores. It absorbs, and over time, it builds a quiet database, so when your gut speaks, it's speaking from experience, not in words, but in emotional shorthand. That, not in your stomach. That's your body comparing this situation to 1,000 other sand, whispering, something here feels familiar and dangerous. That sudden peace around a stranger, it might echo the warmth of someone you once made you feel safe years ago. But here's the twist. Your intuition isn't always right. It's accurate to your past. If you've been betrayed, your gut might be overly cautious. If you've been raised in fear, it might treat calm as suspicious. If you've only ever known chaos, peace might feel unnatural. So yes, your gut is wise, but it's not always truthful. It's a map of where you've been, not necessarily a compass for where you should go. The most dangerous thing isn't a broken instinct, it's an unquestioned one. Because when you treat every gut feeling as gospel, you become loyal to your past, not your future. You might walk away from love because it feels unfamiliar. You might sabotage success because failure feels safe. You might run from joy because joy was never modeled for you. But here's the beauty. You can update your intuition every time you pause and investigate a feeling, not just obey it. You teach your gut a new language. You show it that peace doesn't always mean danger. That discomfort might mean growth. That the unfamiliar isn't always a threat. Sometimes it's just new. And with time, your intuition becomes sharper, wiser, truer. Not just a mirror of old wounds, but a guide toward healing. So the next time your gut speaks, don't just listen. Interpret. Ask, is this fear or memory? Is this intuition or conditioning? Because the voice inside you is powerful, but it's not infallible. And learning to tell the differences, how you start to trust yourself, not blindly, but wisely. You like to believe you're in charge, that the choices you make, from what you eat, to whom you love, to how you spend your time, are yours. Completely, authored from a place of willpower, anchored in reason, driven by freedom. But what if that's a beautiful illusion? What if most of your decisions were less like writing and more like tracing lines that were already drawn? Think about this. You reach for the chocolate bar, but was that you? Or the advertising campaign that made it irresistibly as a go? You pick the movie, but was that you? Or the algorithm that has quietly studied your habits with surgical precision? You fall for someone, but was that you? Or a familiar emotional blueprint formed in childhood, long before you could even name desire? The truth is, you're the pilot, yes, but you didn't build the plane, you didn't design the dashboard, you didn't choose the weather, and many times, you're flying on autopilot, navigating with instruments calibrated by other people. This isn't weakness, it's human, because total control is not just rare, it's impossible. From language, to values, to what you even notice in a room, so much of who you are as built from templates you didn't realize you were following. You inherited beliefs, you absorbed moods, you internalized fears, and now they move through you, quietly steering everything from your career to your breakfast. But this realization isn't despair, it's power. Because when you finally see it, you're not fully in control. You stop pretending. You stop blaming yourself for every impulsivery, mistakeivery, detour, and more importantly, you start to observe. You begin to spot the patterns. You catch the moment before the script takes over. You notice, this isn't me. This is my programming. This isn't a preference, it's a reflex. And in that pause, that tiny, sacred pause, something radical happens. You get to choose, truly choose, not out of habit, not out of guilt, not out of fear, but from presence. That is where your freedom lives, not in the illusion of total control, but in the awareness of when you're being moved. Because you can't control every thought, but you can decide which ones you give power. You can't stop every reflex, but you can interrupt the ones that no longer serve you. And that interruption, that moment of awareness, it's the birthplace of agency. So no, you're not a puppet. You're not a prisoner. You're not a fraud. You're a human learning. To Drivian, a road you didn't pavane, a car you didn't build with instincts you didn't choose. But now, you've opened your eyes, and that changes everything. Everything. Desire feels spontaneous, doesn't it? Like a spark, a whisper that rises up from somewhere deep inside, urging you toward that person, that purchase, that dream. It feels sacred, yours, undeniably authentic. But have you ever stopped to ask, where did that desire come from? Who whispered it first? Was it born in you, or planted? You see a luxury watch, your heart skips. Why? Because it's beautiful? Because it tells time? No, because it signals status. Because decades of marketing an image into your brain. A man in power. Confident, admired, wearing that watch. You're not buying time, you're buying a story of who your beef, you own it. And that story, it's not even yours. Desire doesn't live in a vacuum. It's built layer by layer, cue by cue, association by association. Your hunger for approval, conditioned in childhood. Your preference for a certain face, shaped by exposure. Your craving for a particular lifestyle, fed to you through 1,000 images designed to make you feel incomplete without it. Even the ideal version of yourself you chase was likely drawn by someone else's hand. But here's the twist. Desire isn't the enemy, it's a compass. It tells you something. The problem is, the needles often magnetize forces you don't see. Social rewards, cultural scripts, generational patterns. And once you realize this, you can begin to demagnetize your compass. Start by asking, who benefits if I want this? If the answer is a company, a culture, a parent's ghost. Pause. Is this a real longing or a borrowed one? Does this light me up or just fill a silence? Does it expand my soul or shrink it into someone else's mold? True freedom isn't having everything you desire. It's being able to trace your desires, to see their blueprint, to dismantle the ones that aren't really you. Because under the noise, beneath the programming, behind the glittering promises, there's a different kind of wanting, a quieter one. It doesn't scream, it doesn't sell, it calls, and when you hear it, you'll know, because it won't feel like chasing, it'll feel like returning. You like to think of your mindas, a clean slate, a sovereign space, free to think, choose, desire, believe. But let's step back. Let's really look at what you call you. Your accent, your sense of humor, the foods you crave when you're sad, the songs that make you weep, your political leanings, your taste in art, your deepest fears. even your idea of what makes a life successful. All these weren't born in you. They were given to you. Bit, by family, by friends, by the media you consumed when you were too young to filter. You didn't build your mind in isolation, it was shaped through osmosis. Every time you absorbed a belief without questioning it. Every time you nodded to avoid conflict. Every time you laughed because others laughed. A brick was laid in the architecture of your identity. And over time, a structure rose, complex, beautiful, but not entirely yours ought. And the more certain you feel about who you are, the less likely you are to ask, where did these certainties come from? There's a reason most people don't change their worldview, even when faced with evidence. It's not just stubbornness, it's self-preservation. Because if a belief cracks, what else might fall with it? People cling to illusions of independencies. The alternative is terrifying. That you are a mosaic of influences you didn't choose on, patterns you never saw forming. But here's the gift in this discomfort. If your mind was shaped once, it can be reshaped. You can unlearn, you can rewire, you can reduce, but first, you have to stop protecting the version of you that was built to fit a mold you didn't design. You must let some parts fall so others can rise. Because real freedom isn't having a strong opinion. It's being able to see the scaffolding that built it, and then, if needed, dismantle it without fear. So you make a decision. Maybe it's what to eat, who to trust, whether to speak or stay silent. Maybe it's something bigger, who to marry, what to believe, which path to follow when the road splits. And you feel it, that electric tingle of ownership, as if the choice came from you, through you, by you. But pause, really pause. Where did that choice begin? Let's rewind. Long before you made the decision, you saw something. Maybe a movie, heard something. Maybe a friend's casual comment, felt something. Maybe a childhood emotion you never processed. And those things planted seeds, tiny, invisible threads woven into your psyche. So by the time the choice arrived, it didn't feel like a suggestion, it felt like a truth. And truth can be dangerous. It feels natural only because it's familiar. So many of your strongest decisions aren't acts of free will, they're echoes of what you were told success looks like, echoes of your need to be accepted, echoes of your desire to avoid shame. You call it instinct, you call it a gut feeling, but sometimes that gut is just a haunted hall refilled with voices you never knew were still inside you. It gets deeper sometimes. The system itself lays out the menu for you: what to wear, what body to desire, what job to chase, what timeline your life should follow. You think you're picking from infinite options, but in truth, you're picking from a pre-approved selection of what society told you was reasonable. So what happens when you want to choose differently? Your body resists, your breath tightens, your mind whispers, this feels wrong. But is it wrong? Or just unfamiliar? Is it dangerous? Or just not endorsed by the voices you were trained to trust? Real choice, terrifying, expansive choice, isn't about doing what feels safe. It's about noticing the moment you are about to follow the script, and asking, who wrote this scene? And more importantly, do I still want to play this role? Somewhere in your mind, there is a quiet newsroom. Not the kind filled with chaos, but a polished, dimly lit space where editors sit in silence, deciding which thoughts are worthy and which are inconvenient. You never hired them. You don't remember the interview, but they've been there. long before you had words to question them. They don't shout, they don't argue, they curate, they gently nudge one idea forward while brushing another quietly aside. And that's how your beliefs are shaped, not by direct commands, but by the consistent exposure to what is shown and what is hidden, what earns applause and what earns a raised eyebrow, what makes others lean in with admiration and what makes the room go cold. So maybe you believe in hard work, or in staying humble, or in love that lasts. Maybe you think you don't believe in anything at all, but each of those beliefs was likely stamped and sealed by the unseen editors who decided which thoughts felt comfortable, which felt like trouble. Remember the first time a few felt an opinion rise in your chest drawer, unfiltered, almost primal, and then you buried it, because it didn't sound like what you would say, because it wasn't what smart people believed, because someone you admired once scoffed at that exact thought, so you whispered to it, "Not today," and it slipped into the shadows. That's what they do, their editors. They don't erase thoughts. They shelve them, label them, hide them behind walls of doubt or shame. And over time, you forget they ever existed. You begin to call the surviving ones truth. But imagine, for just one quiet moment, if the editors stepped away, if the censorship paused, what ideas would sprint to the surface? What questions would scream through the cracks? What wild, untamed belief will demand to be heard? You think you know what you believe, but maybe you only know what's been allowed. And maybe real freedom begins the moment you walk into that newsroom, meet your inner editors face to face, and say, "Let's print the whole story." And now, you find yourself at the edge. Not a dramatic cliff, not a spotlighted finale, but something gentler, stranger, a moment so still, you almost miss its power. It's not the kind of ending where music swells. There is no applause, no curtain, just you, and a feeling that something behind your eyes has shifted. Because for the first time, you see the web, not just the surface of your decisions, but the threads below, the invisible hands, the quiet scripts, the half-remembered voices that told you who to be before you ever had a choice. You've walked through dopamine loops, social mimicry, mirror neurons, echo chambers, and ancient instincts, each force whispered with calm certainty, "You're choosing this." But now, you know better. You know that choice was often just a preloaded path, cleverly disguised, your own reflection. And still, there's something liberating in that because now that you see it, you're not trapped by it. The machine doesn't stop, but you no longer mistake it for your soul. You are not your cravings. You are not your fears. You are not your fears. You are not your algorithm. You are the awareness that watches them all. So maybe you won't change everything. Maybe you'll still scroll too long, still seek approval, still chase familiar patterns. But maybe, just maybe, you'll do it awake. You'll feel the tug and pause. You'll sense the echo and whisper back, "I hear you, but I choose this." Not because you're supposed to, not because it's easy, but because something in you done living on autopilot. The invisible forces haven't disappeared, but now you are no longer invisiplator yourself. And sometimes, that single quotes as all it, tokesto begin again, quietly, freely.
you.